Can I advise that the first amendment has been received from Councillor Richard Kemp, which is attached as Appendix B to this note. Formal confirmation has also been received that the amendment is seconded by Councillor Makinson. Can I invite Councillor Kemp to speak to his amendment, please?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. The purpose of the addendum that we're moving today is threefold. Firstly, we want to make it absolutely clear to the people of Liverpool how we've arrived at the situation which we found ourselves in setting this budget. Secondly, we want to show how the council can do things to actually take us out of the very difficult financial circumstances that we're in and will continue to be in unless firm action is taken. And thirdly, to start perhaps this council on leading the way into a national debate about how we collect tax both locally and nationally, because one of the main problems we've got is an unfair local taxation system and an unfair distribution of money within this country from wealthy areas to poorer areas. My Lord Mayor, I admitted many times over the last 12 years that the coalition government, which only served effectively for 4 of those years, took money out of Liverpool when it shouldn't have done. Absolutely right. But my Lord Mayor, the government took the same money at the same proportion, at the same ratio, from every other council in the north of England. Not the rich counties of the south, but the Manchesters, the Newcastles, the Leeds, the Hulls. All suffered in the same way that we did. But my Lord Mayor, only one of those councils went on to lose 135 million and counting of its own money through the incompetence, failure and the total organisational corruption of a key department of the council. It's Liverpool, which is the only council where a best value inspection led to the imposition of commissioners. It's Liverpool. We have been brought to this point by an incompetent or worse political leadership, which was in place to the end of 2020, and an incompetent or worse managerial leadership, which was in place until mid-2018, and which is only just being reconstructed into a viable progressive officer corps. And I would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to our chief executive and our 151 officer in particular for the rigour that they have begun to bring insofar as they could against all the constraints facing them during the last 3 years or so that they have been here. I was amused to see a press release went out from this council when we were looking at the Lime Street debacle, which blamed the former administration for those problems. My Lord Mayor, we are the former administration. You, over there, are just a continuation of Joe Anderson's administration, where more than half the people sitting opposite me, and perhaps 1 or 2 behind me now, actually took Joe Anderson's shilling and turned their backs on the obvious problems which were being stoked up inside this council. Let's look at some examples of that. 4.5 million in uncollected Section 106 money, plus millions more where the council listened to every sob-story that billionaire developers could bring them and made no Section 106 charge at all, a practice which we all know continues to this day. £700,000 for Mayor Anderson to pursue his dreams of owning the Everton football stadium. 13.5 million.
Councillor, can I ask you to stop naming people who are not here so they can't defend themselves? So carry on with your speech without naming names.
I'm sure we all know who the politician is I'm referring to, so you're quite right, I don't need to make that point. So 13.5 million overspend on the inner city movement strategy, plus another 1.5 million, plus of course the interest on putting that right. 5 million for the Tarm Academy, 1.1 million lost by giving away sites at no value to small builders, 1.25 million to provide a new base for the Women's Technology Centre, which a developer should have provided. 1.25 million overpaid to providers of adult care, and which is probably unrecoverable. In this year's budget, you will find 750,000 to pay for the commissioners, £4 million for an improvement plan, money which I've been unable to quantify for consultants and advisors, £707,000 for the repayment of borrowing and interest on the Lime Street debacle. All these and many, many more are the real reasons we cannot afford libraries or proper maintenance of our parks and roads. But on top of that financial cost, there is an even worse cost, and that is the cost to some of the most disadvantaged people in this city, the old and the young. Of course the two are linked. If Liverpool was spending a shed load of money to provide the best services to young and our old, we would be defending that money to the hilt. But we're not. Liverpool is spending more money per person than almost any other council, but providing worse services for children and adults than, again, almost any other council. And it may get worse. Unless urgent action is taken, the extra funding needed for children's services will be £63 million by the financial year 25-26. The latest monitoring statement for the current financial year, the month 9 monitoring report, shows that £49 million is being spent on private sector children's care. Some of that is needed. There are times when we need to take children well away from the city or even from the city region because of the problems with county lines and some of the personal problems they hold. But look at the money that is going straight out to the private sector in a way that is unchallengeable, unaccountable, because we do not provide those services in-house. The same is true with the provision of adult social care, which runs at £233 million a year, which is being spent through the private sector. Some of it well, and some of it will always continue to be to be paid through the private sector. But many of it is not a good provision at all. And we believe that we need to reverse the problems of the Blair years, when this council, like every other council, was forced through a so-called best value regime to transfer effectively its services to the private sector. That's what we need to do. Look at bringing those services back in-house. And lastly, my Lord Mayor, just to look at the appalling system by which we collect money. We believe as a party, and I think most of the people over there believe as well, that the biggest amounts of tax should be paid by those with the broadest shoulders with the biggest incomes. But that's not what happens under a property-based system. The current rental levels on which the council tax bandings are based was set in 1991 levels, in 1993. They were supposed to be upgraded to 1998 levels in the year 2000. As I've remarked before, and I will be finishing on time, as we have remarked before, 15% of Liverpool didn't even exist as a built-up environment, particularly along the river, when those rent levels were set. We need to revise the system, and we need to have a fair system, such as the EU uses, to redistribute money. My Lord Mayor, I'll close on this note. At the last meeting, a Labour councillor told us how angry she was that we were spending time looking at how £100,000 was going to be spent. Well, the problem in Liverpool, my Lord Mayor, is they didn't listen to my old mum. My old mum used to say, look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. The trouble has been in Liverpool for more than a decade that no one looked at the penny or the pounds, and that's why we're in the mess we are today. My Lord Mayor, I move.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Makinson.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I'm seconding this addendum and will be voting against the budget resolution because, frankly, I have no confidence in the ability of this Labour administration to spend money properly or on the right priorities. For instance, we have a capital programme that pours even more into city centre roads, while continuing to underfund road safety schemes in the rest of the city. Just in my ward, there are two dangerous junctions, on Menlove Avenue and Mather Avenue, where a child was hit last month. We are told that fixing these junctions will cost 1.5 million each, and they are at the top of the council's priority list. They've been at the top of that priority list for the past 6 years. My constituents are already appalled at the 70 million that's been spent on the Strand and Lime Street, but they will be dismayed to see a further 6 million is being committed to be thrown at the Strand over the next 2 years, while school children and residents take their lives in their hands. We're not convinced by the green bin savings assumptions. At the Finance and Resources Committee, both in October and last week, I asked what allowance had been made for increased costs of removing fly tipping and the pavement leaves that residents will stop collecting. How much extra we will end up paying in penalties when we fail to reach the 51% recycling target in 2025. The answer I received in October and again last week was, we will send you that information. Well, I'm still waiting. And we're expected to vote for a budget without knowing the consequences, just as members opposite last year voted for one-stop shop closures, only to be shocked later on to discover that they'd voted to close facilities in their own wards. We continue to support the administration in demanding more resources for our city from central government. But that job is made much harder when we go to government asking, for instance, for 4 million to tackle homelessness, and then months later decide to give it back to this government. My Lord Mayor, whether you're a household or a council, it's always a good idea to have something set aside for a rainy day. But at a time when our residents are having to choose between heating and eating, I doubt many households will be doubling their own savings accounts. Yet we're being asked to make people pay more council tax, not to protect services, but to put an extra 20 million in the council's piggy bank, 10 million this year. Why is this happening? Well, the CIPFA review highlights the woeful assessment of the authority's financial management. The city is worse at collecting its debts than other core cities. We are continuing to be fleeced by private sector children's homes, charging us more than £250,000 per child. CIPFA have told officers to double the reserves, largely because they do not have confidence in this Labour administration's financial management. My Lord Mayor, people are struggling with rising food and fuel bills. I cannot look my constituents in the eye and tell them they are receiving value for money for the council tax they are already paying. Thank you.
Councillor Klein.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Notwithstanding annual budget cuts, which would also have happened under a Labour government post-2010, this council is plagued by inefficiency, mismanagement and waste. Whether it's simple things like filling a pothole again and again and again, or perhaps the £1.5 million and rising overspend on Lime Street, or even the letting off of developers of promised Section 106 money, money earmarked for the communities we all serve. The final insult, Lord Mayor, is the many hundreds of thousands of pounds the people of Liverpool are paying the commissioners trying to remedy your incompetence, your inability to lead, and your corrupt practices as highlighted by the Calla report. A shameful record of being in power for 12 years. 12 years airbrushed from history. Even when this Labour administration was offered money by the government, like the £4 million towards a new homeless shelter, you failed to deliver and sent it back. You couldn't make it up. So, what's the big budget balancing brainwave from an administration we know has wasted more than £130 million? The geniuses, this lot here, who run our city, have come up with, wait for it, a green bin tax. Even with 100% take-up, it will claw back just £1.7 million. When I raised this issue at the Neighbourhoods Committee on the 17th of November, I was told that although it was a contentious issue, and you could say that again, contentious all right, it couldn't be discussed at that meeting as it was a budget proposal out for consultation and my party would get its chance at a later date. Well, I guess that time is now. So here are the results of our consultation with residents. You'll be interested in this. Less than 1 in 5 said they would pay. Less than 1 in 5. More than 40% said they'd stop using their green bin and put more in their purple bin. So with less than 20% paying, this service will be unviable. Perhaps that's Labour's intention. If 42% put green waste in their purple bin, this will ramp up the amount the council pays in landfill charges and do little to improve the already embarrassing recycling rate of 26%. This policy will not work and sends out entirely the wrong message about the environmental attitudes of the council, particularly after unanimously declaring a climate emergency almost 3 years ago. What we need is a forward-thinking, clear plan to address this issue, not an ill-judged scheme likely to cost money, not save it. Lord Mayor, history shows that whenever the Labour Party runs this city for an extended time, it brings it to its knees. Next year, the people of Liverpool will have an opportunity to show what they think of Labour's record over the last 12 years, including 10 years with an all-powerful elected mayor forced upon us. I'm confident that this undemocratic and dangerous experiment will soon be rejected by the people of Liverpool. I'm also confident that they won't forgive the incompetence or forget the shameful practices which have dogged this Labour Council and embarrassed our city so much as a result. Finally, Lord Mayor, the reality is that only the Liberal Democrats, as we did so effectively before, can restore the council's reputation, responsibly manage I know you don't want to listen to this, responsibly manage the finances of this city, address the huge challenges we face in the future, and ensure best value for the council taxpayers of Liverpool. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Councillor McAllister-Bell.
Thank you very much. I agree with Councillor Simon that our officers are the crown jewel of this council. And what they have been is failed by political leadership. We know that from the Calla report. We see in the Echo headline that said, failed. I would love some of the people who've spoken tonight to read it and understand it in the words of another council meeting, because it matters. We're sitting here and you're talking about politics. It's clear what the Labour group decided at their group meeting. We can't stand on our record, so we'll attack them. You can't sit there and we can't run on your record. You know, I've got a stat for you. 336 out of 341 that this Labour administration rates for recycling. That's the truth, and that's felt by our communities out there. 336, that's where you rate out of councils. So when it comes, and if you don't take my word that introducing this isn't right, take a Labour leader of Anglesey. They introduced it, and recycling rates fell by 72%. They said it was a mistake. So political leadership has failed this city, and you would rather stand here and have the people of Liverpool listen to 12 years ago this, 15 years ago that. You're not a forward division, and you're not a forward thinking party. You're distracting. Here's the reality. You don't want to talk about why they're over there. So you'd rather talk about what happened 12 years ago. And the people of Liverpool are being let down. So the people of Liverpool are being let down. Now, what I would say is, I have. So when it comes, here's the best one. Out of the top 5 councils for recycling rates, 4 of them are Liberal Democrats, and we only control 26 councils. Let's hope next May it becomes 27, and maybe we can improve that recycling rate as well. The people of Liverpool are being let down, and I hope they're watching, and I hope they see your political tactics tonight, because you're laying them down. That's why we are putting our amendment forward that shows a different way, because it's on offer to them.